Alright kids, in this video we're going to talk about the tangent function. A lot of it's going to be very familiar because we already discussed the sine and the cosine function on the unit circle, and the tangent just kind of ties it all together for you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, this is a picture of a unit circle, and on the unit circle we were talking about the coordinates being equal to the sine and the cosine. And the reason was because if you draw a triangle on the unit circle, the hypotenuse is always going to be equal to 1. Now, this opposite side here of this triangle has two purposes for this point right there, x and y. It's the length of the side of the triangle, but it's also the y coordinate because it represents the distance between the x-axis and the point. So it's also the y coordinate. And this side of the triangle represents the x coordinate in the same way. It's the distance from the origin to a place right underneath the point. So this side of the triangle is also the x coordinate. Then we said, okay, well, if this is the y coordinate, this is the x coordinate, if I wanted to find the sine of this angle, the ratio of two sides, namely the opposite over the hypotenuse, the opposite side is y, or the opposite side is the sine, because the hypotenuse is 1. So we went ahead and said that y is the sine and x is the cosine, because the cosine is the adjacent side, right? Okay, so now let's take that one step further. Let's remember the definition of the tangent. The tangent of an angle is the ratio of the opposite side over the adjacent side. So when we're looking at the opposite side here, we're looking at the y coordinate. So this is the y coordinate. When we're looking at the adjacent side, we're looking at the x coordinate. In other words, the tangent is the sine of the angle divided by the cosine of the angle. So you can think of tangent in a couple of different ways now. You can think about it as y over x. You can think about it as sine over cosine. And really, that's just about it. Let's go ahead and do some problems and see how we use it. So if I want to find the tangent of 60 degrees, and you do have to be able to do this without a calculator, remember. You want to start by drawing the angle in standard position. So you're going to start with a little unit circle, and you're going to sketch the angle. There's your 60 degrees. You're going to drop your perpendicular and get what we call our reference triangle, and we're going to label this triangle. The hypotenuse is 1 because it's on the unit circle. And then across from the 60 is radical 3 over 2. And this angle is 30 degrees. Across from the 30 is 1/2. So there's that special right triangle. Now if I want the tangent, the sine and cosine are the x and y coordinates. So the cosine is the x, is the half, and the sine is the y, which is radical 3 over 2. The tangent of your angle is going to be equal to the sine over the cosine, y over x, or sine over cosine, and that's going to be radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. That's the value of the tangent. Of course, you've got to simplify. So you can think about this as radical 3 over 2 divided by 1/2. In other words, we just multiply by the reciprocal. When we do that, the 2's cancel, and your final answer is radical 3 over 1, which is radical 3. Now, another way you could think about this is, once you get good, you remember if there's common factors in the denominators, they could have just canceled and you could have been done. But I wanted you to see why you're canceling those common factors, because it becomes a reciprocal for multiplication. Let's go ahead and do the tangent of 40 degrees, 240 degrees. So the tangent of 240, we're going to sketch it in standard position. Drop our perpendicular. Now we need to get our reference angle. We went to 180 and then we went another 60 degrees. So this is the 60-degree triangle again, but it's going to present a couple of challenges. Across from the 60 is radical 3 over 2, but it's negative because it's the y coordinate. Adjacent, or across from the 30, is negative 1/2. Okay? So the tangent of 240 degrees is equal to y over x sine over cosine, or negative rad 3 over 2 divided by negative 1/2. The 2's cancel, a negative divided by a negative, so we get radical 3 again, positive radical 3. And if you notice, that's the only two quadrants where the tangent is positive. The tangent is positive here because remember, you're dividing y and x. So if y and x are positive, a positive divided by a positive is a positive. If you divide a negative and a negative, which is quadrant 3, it's also going to be positive because a negative divided by a negative is positive. In quadrant 2 and 4, tangent's going to be negative. Okay? Let's do the tangent of pi over 2. Now, the tangent of pi over 2 is the tangent of 90 degrees, right? 180 divided by 2 is 90. Those coordinates on the unit circle are 0 for x and 1 for y. That means that the cosine is 0 and the sine is y. The sine is 1. So if I want the tangent of pi over 2 is equal to sine over the cosine. The sine over the cosine, 1 over 0, is undefined. So if you're asked to find the tangent of 90 degrees or pi over 2, it's undefined. There is no answer for that. Now, you have to also consider that the denominator here is the cosine. So basically, you can't divide by 0. So wherever the cosine is 0, you're going to have an undefined tangent. Cosine is 0 at 90 and at 270, or any angles that are coterminal with that, negative 90, negative 270. Any angle that's coterminal with 90 degrees or 270 is going to have an undefined tangent. All right? Let's do the tangent of pi. Pi is 180 degrees. We're going to sketch it. There's your point. It's going to be negative 1 comma 0. The tangent is the sine over the cosine. So the tangent of your angle is 0 divided by negative 1. And that's fine. You can have a tangent value of 0. The tangent is 0. Okay? I'm going to move that up because I got to feel I'm going to put my head there. Okay? All right. Now, let's go ahead and let you try a couple. Go ahead and find the values for those, and I'll go through them real quickly with you if I need to. Okay, so you should have gotten tangent of 45 degrees is 1, and the tangent of 3 pi over 2 is undefined. Here's why. If you're sketching 45 degrees, that's the 45 degree triangle. The cosine is radical 2 over 2, and the sine is radical 2 over 2. So the y coordinate, or the sine, is the same as the cosine, or the x coordinate. So when you divide two of the same numbers, you're always going to get 1, right? So the tangent of 45 degrees is 1. So on the 45s, tangent's going to have values of 1 or negative 1 usually. Okay, now the tangent of 3 pi over 2, let's go ahead and sketch that. That's the 270. Okay? There, the cosine is 0, and the sine is negative 1. So you're going to have sine over cosine, so the tangent is undefined. Okay? All right, let's go on and do something else. Okay, take a second and write that one down. Pause the video if you need to, and I'm going to go through it with you. Okay, so it says determine the value of the cosine and the tangent if the sine is 5 over 13 and it lies in the second quadrant. Well, we can do it this way. We can just sketch it out. They tell you it's in the second quadrant for a reason, because the sine is a positive number. There are two places where the sine is positive, where y is positive, here and here. Remember, sine is y, so for y to be positive, it's got to be in the first or second quadrant. So they want you to draw this angle in the second quadrant, which is going to make a difference. So, there it is. I'm going to drop my reference angle. And remember, 5 over 13 is the sine. That's the opposite side over the hypotenuse, or y over x. So that means that this is 5 and the hypotenuse is 13. The hypotenuse is always positive when you do these type of problems. Okay? So if I want the cosine, I can use Pythagorean theorem, or if we remember, it's just a 5, 12, 13 triangle, and we'll get the adjacent side. Okay, and I use that because I know it's a Pythagorean triple. So if I want the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Well, the cosine, I should have put a negative there. The cosine is negative 12 because it's a negative x. So the cosine of your angle is going to be negative 12 over 13. And the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. So the tangent of your angle is going to be 5 over negative 12. Remember, we don't put negatives in denominators. Put it up in the top. Okay? And there's your answer. Let me let you try one.